Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Melissa, and this channel is all about psychiatric drug withdrawal reactions and recovery. And it draws on my 8 years of experience in this community, as well as my own recovery journey. And I just like to cover topics and things that come up regularly in my conversations with people because there are so many layers to this experience. So, this video today is one that I've hesitated to make for so long. And the truth is, I I get afraid to talk about this because of the way people might receive it or perceive it. And I really need to get over that because this is part of my story, a very important part of my story that is coming up more and more in my conversations with people, one on one with clients. So I do one on one coaching. If you're interested in checking that out, I will put a link to my calendar in the description. But this video today is about the main thing that I feel like changed my journey or affected my journey the most in the positive. And one of the reasons I really wanted to make this video today is because the last month in my life has been particularly difficult. Multiple life stressors, so many things coming up out of my control. And I found myself getting really angry and just being in a state of stress that was affecting my daughter and myself and just my well-being. And I found myself becoming very negative, cynical, and feeling trapped because what had been coming into my life and what I was experiencing was mostly out of my control. And I'm a very practical person, very resourceful, and I always can figure my way out of things for the most part. And what was coming up is not something that has an immediate answer. And so I really had to do a lot of like digging deep and realizing what has helped me through so many parts of my life, particularly withdrawal, and that is focusing on the end result. I've talked about the law of attraction on this video before, the law of assumption, and the way that the subconscious mind works, but I feel like not in enough detail. And I want to share how this has affected my life, how it works, and how you can apply it to your own recovery. So I'm going to start with sharing a few different ways that this has really impacted my life. I first was exposed to this way of thinking, this idea in 2006 or 7. I think it was on the Oprah show where she was talking about The Secret, and it intrigued me because I've been through a lot of very difficult things in my life that were beyond my control and were difficult to process, and obviously changed my view of the world in some pretty profound ways. The first one being getting diabetes at 16, nearly dying from that, and then developing another chronic disease when I was 29, but it had been undiagnosed for many years. And so it was changing my perception of the world, and it was starting to feel like my body was betraying me and that so many things in life were outside of my control, and that was scary to me. And so when I came upon this information that you can impress on your subconscious mind a different way, a different outcome, and it can move things in ways you would never have thought possible, it was very intriguing for me. So I first really started getting into this practice in 2015, and I was on psychiatric drugs for 4 years at that point, and my life was going along pretty well, but there were things that I wanted to change. And I didn't really know how to do that because the way that I tend to move through life is through sheer effort. And again, a lot of things that had happened outside of my control, I felt powerless to change. And it didn't feel like putting in more effort was going to change the outcome. And so I decided to start taking a different approach and applying some of the things that I had been learning slowly, but kind of in drips since 2006 to my life at this point in 2015. So one of the things that I really wanted was a relationship. And up until that point, I had never been in a long-term relationship. And I was 30, how old was I in 2015? 33. And I was embarrassed by it. And it was not for lack of effort. I mean, I was very active on the dating apps. I was going on sometimes 4 dates in a weekend, and it just wasn't working for me. And so I decided to change my approach. And so I decided to start visualizing my ideal life. I created my first vision board. I started thinking about the end result rather than getting lost in the details, because the details were, okay, I just need to go on. It's a numbers game. I need to go on as many dates as possible and something will stick. But I was exhausted. So I started visualizing in detail what I wanted my life to look like. And a few months later, and also around this time, one of my closest friends passed away from cancer. And so that was really adding to my stress load and just feeling like my life was out of control. And so I was still on the dating apps, but I was trying a different approach. And so I met someone, actually, someone reached out to me from a different city and basically didn't take no for an answer, but not in a creepy way. He just was persistent. And so I met him, went on a first date, and he traveled to see me. And after that, right after that date, I actually wrote a letter to my future daughter and gave her a name. I dated it, and I wrote to her as if she were already real and in existence. And fast forward, now I have that daughter with that person and she has that name. So obviously, I didn't end up with that person, but I got the most beautiful gift I could have ever imagined out of it, even when everything in my life at the time I got pregnant, which was in 2021, was completely against me ever being able to have a child. I was almost 40 years old. At that point, when I got pregnant, or just prior to it, there was no man in sight. I had broken up with this person that I had wrote the letter to my daughter after the first date with. And my hormones had been out of whack for years, and I was in withdrawal. And I was like, there's no way. Like, there was like a 5% chance that I would be able to have a baby naturally. And yet I did. So that was one example. Another one is in 2020, so I was still in, or was it 19? Must have been 19. I was still in my first withdrawal. So I was much more functional in that withdrawal. And I started applying the law of attraction again. And so at that point I was up to my eyeballs in debt. That's one of the reasons why I went off antidepressants, was because I had no money. And I was like, I can't afford anything outside of food, shelter, clothing, like nothing. And I didn't think that the antidepressants were really working anymore. So because I had so much debt and I was in my first withdrawal, that's why I quit the antidepressants. I was just working and working and working and working. And I felt like I couldn't get anywhere, because every time I would make a payment towards my debt, my over limit fees, my interest charges, everything was so high that the principal amount would barely come down. And I would just cry and cry and cry. And I was like, I've got to try a different approach. I mean, I was working at one point 4 jobs to try to make ends meet and to try to get ahead. And I just couldn't make any headway. So I was like, I've got to get a lump sum of money somehow to make a dent and to start to build momentum on this debt journey. So I picked the number. Well, I had probably about $50,000 in debt. And I picked the number 20,000 just because I thought, okay, that's going to make a significant dent. I'm actually going to be able to make some momentum in this journey if I could get a starting point of $20,000. I literally started writing about it. I started writing that number down repeatedly. I would do visualizations where I would put Canadian dollar bills up to my nose and I could smell them in my mind, or like in my mind's eye. And I would envision in great detail opening up my bank account, seeing this lump sum of money, walking into my mom's room and saying, you're never going to guess what happened. Look at this. And showing her my phone, seeing that number in there. And like, I had no idea how this would ever come about. I mean, I was doing sheer effort at that point and just working and working. And I just wasn't making the headway I needed to make. And it was extremely stressful. On top of, I already was in this massive debt problem before withdrawal, and then the first withdrawal added to that, and then I was just in this mess of a situation. And so I did this for quite some time, and there's ways that I do it, but I try to integrate as many sort of methods as possible. And I was doing this for a while. Every single night I had this complex night routine, and one day I get a message on Facebook from someone that I had been friends with for a while through one of the diabetes online groups, but I had very little one-on-one interaction with. And this message pops up in Messenger that says, hey, have you learned about the disability tax credit in Canada for type 1 diabetics? And at first I thought it was a scam because around that time there were a bunch of sort of scam messages going around for about government grants and different things. So I almost dismissed it. But because I had had light interaction with this person before, I thought I would ask a few more questions. So I did. And then I looked it up and it was legit. But I thought, how am I going to start this? And she was in the process of getting this tax credit. And so I asked her details. She showed me how to start the process. And I thought, man, that's a really big coincidence. So anyway, I went through the process of doing it and I ended up getting a lump sum from the Canadian government for 19,000 and some change. So not exactly 20,000, but very close. And so it was amazing. It happened exactly like I envisioned. I remember going into my mom's room and showing her and practically screaming because I was going through this process of getting the tax credit and I wasn't sure where I was at in the process. And then I just opened my banking app and there was the money. I'll actually show it on screen here. An amazing, amazing thing. So that's two significant things. The other story that I wanted to share about how powerful this work can be is in 2018 and 19, I was trying really hard to lose weight. I was 37, or how old would I have been? 36, 37. So I was getting closer to 40. And, that can really impact women's metabolism and their hormones are having effects on their bodies. And I mean, I was restricting my carbs. I was eating a salad every day for lunch. I was walking to and from work. I was trying so hard and the scale would not budge, like even 1 pound. And I was so frustrated and I couldn't understand why. And again, it's so easy to get lost in all of the details of, is thermodynamics, does it apply right to me right now? Is it my hormones? Do I need to replace those hormones? Do I need to shift? Do I need to eat different foods? Do I need to start fasting? It gets so stressful and confusing. And so the same thing applies. I started to do a lot of mental work and I would visualize myself in detail from a point of view perspective, looking down at what I was wearing and what my body looked like and felt like, and how others were commenting on how nice I looked and I felt confident in my clothes. And someone would even hold my hand and kind of spin me around in this new outfit. And I could just feel what that was like to have that ideal body that I was looking for. And that was the only thing that changed. I was getting older as time went on and I was not exercising more. I was not dieting. The only thing that changed was I started doing this mental work. And I kid you not, I lost 15 pounds when I started doing that. And I remember saying all the time at this time, it's so effortless to lose weight. Like, I don't know why I found it so hard before. It's easy. My body lets go of weight so easily. And I was affirming it. So not only was I visualizing it in detail, but I was affirming it all day long. And I also would try to envelop myself in gratitude. So even though there were so many things I felt like in my reality to not be grateful for, I purposely focused on the small things that I could find, very small. I mean, it could even just be the warmth of a blanket at night. It could just be another breath. It could be anything, and really starting to focus on gratitude. And I kid you not, that was when I lost the weight. It was just amazing to me. And even looking back, and at the time, I remember having conversations with people on Facebook Messenger being like, weight is just effortless. Like, my metabolism is working really well and I feel amazing in my body. It's effortless to lose weight. And that's another way that I manifested essentially a different body just through mental work. And so then in my withdrawal, I started to do more and more and more of this. And what I would do is, because what happens in withdrawal is that you get so focused on the details. You're trying to figure out what is wrong, like what is actually wrong. So even if someone tells you, okay, you're in withdrawal, or you figure it out, you're like, what does that actually mean? And how do I understand? How do I make sense of this? And the truth is, you really can't. Like, it's very difficult to understand. It's a very difficult process and journey to understand. But the thing I love about the law of attraction is it transcends all of that. So what you're doing is you're living in the end result. So the end result, so this can be multiple areas of your life. If you're trying to gain more money, if you're trying to find the right relationship or health, then this is living in that end result, and the details take care of themselves. And that's what I love about it so much. So at the end of, I'm getting my years maybe mixed up. Somewhere in there, I made a new vision board, and I wish I still had it. It got kind of damaged in my move, and then my daughter got at it and was ripping the pictures off. But I made a video of it, and I need to find that video. But most of the things that I put on there is what I have in my life now. And I used to do, like I said, multiple ways to sort of get this. I would make vision boards. I had this complex visualization routine. If you're someone who can't visualize or struggles with that, you can write it. You can write like a journal entry as if it's happening already, even if your life looks nothing like that. So the purpose of it is to transcend whatever's going on. You don't have to get lost in the details. You are focusing on the end result, which is healing. So when you have this reality that you feel like your whole life is out of control and what you want looks completely different than what you have, your subconscious mind has to resolve this tension. And so it will go to work to make that end result happen. And so that's why it's such an amazing tool and way to change your life, because again, you get so lost in the details, and your brain essentially is kind of running these programs based on what it's predicting. And so then you have to shift that, but you don't shift that by getting lost in the details. You shift it by focusing on the end result. I'm going to put some links in the description of this video for some creators that I really, really loved and followed in my own journey of recovery, and who really inspired me and taught me how this work works. And the focus is a lot on your internal experience and focusing on an end result that you don't know how you're going to get. But the beauty of it is that you don't need to understand the how. And this has shown up in my life time and time and time again. So again, like everything that I've experienced, so with having a child, which my current reality reflected the complete opposite of a child ever happening naturally for me, but it happened anyway. Same with my money situation. I was doing all of the effort. I was trying, but the key is not to try harder. It's to change and live in the end result. So that's what I was doing with my visualization of the $20,000. And it shows up sort of out of nowhere, it seems. And that, again, is the beauty of it. And I want to talk about, and I've talked about self-compassion a lot on this channel, and that can be very hard to cultivate. I mean, given your current situation that you're likely very angry about and sort of lost in, and also especially if you're someone who is not used to speaking to yourself and treating yourself in a compassionate way. That's certainly been my history. Very type A, very goal-oriented, achieve, do everything at a head level. But this type of work has been transformative for me. And so the links I'm going to post focus on how to create and live in that end result, which is health and whatever else you're trying to create. I just need a drink of water, 1 second. But also how to change the way your body is responding to your thoughts. Because so often in this community, we are focused on biochemical reactions, what the drug is doing. But if you pay attention, and I hear this all the time in coaching calls, your diet is more than just the food you eat. It's everything in your environment. And it's more than just the drug. Because when people are in safe environments, when they're talking to a coach, when they're around safe people, when they're talking in groups where the conversation might be light, they're focusing on something different, their symptoms, they won't notice them, or their symptoms will lift. And then as soon as they start, talking about the fear of the situation, what does this mean? What do I have? Is this permanent? What is actually going on in my body? People's symptoms will elevate. They'll escalate. They'll flare up. They'll get worse because of the way your body works, the way your subconscious mind works, the way that you're talking to yourself affects your physiology. It just does. I hear this time and time again. And so the other link that I'm going to be posting focuses a lot in how to speak to yourself in a different way. And it's not just about doing it once or twice. It's about saturating yourself in this all the time. And what I have found works the best is it can work at any time, but when you're feeling a little bit more at a baseline, which for many people is in the evenings, really cultivating this and saturating yourself in this different reality and then this different way of relating to yourself and your symptoms. That's when it tends to be the most effective. However, if you are in a particularly bad flare, like I've talked about, being in a safe environment and listening to something soothing will help your symptoms to dial down. And this woman that I'm going to be posting the link, the second link, healed herself of cancer in this way, which sounds completely far-fetched, but it's true. I've read her story in detail. It's absolutely amazing. And I bet you'll notice small shifts when you start to do this type of work. And it can feel very foreign. And it's not something that comes easily. It's built on practice and a cumulative effect. But I really believe like this is happening all the time. You are creating this environment of fear and of illness. You're not creating it. I'm not saying you're creating it, but saturating yourself in that and talking about the fear and the symptoms will elevate your symptoms, and doing the opposite will bring them down. And cumulatively over time, this will change the way that your body responds. I'm sure of it. And I wanted to say that. And interestingly enough, this was about 7 years ago. I don't remember if I must have been in my first withdrawal already. I was working in the school system, and I remember I was a casual, so I worked at all different schools in the city, depending on where they needed help that day. I was like a floater. I was a teacher's assistant, and I remember being in the office, the school office one day, and there were these two jars sitting on the desk, and they both had rice in them, and one of them was moldy and looked very toxic and black, and the other one looked like normal rice. And I remember asking, like, what is this about? And maybe there was a sign there too explaining it. I can't remember. But they did this experiment, and this used to be on social media, where you have this rice, cooked rice in jars. And this can apparently work with plants too, like green leafy plants, where the students would take turns berating the jar of rice, like one jar of rice, talking down on it, saying hurtful, hateful things to it, and then cultivating love and speaking with love to the other jar of rice. And literally, like, I saw it with my own two eyes. The jar that had been berated and talked to in that way, the rice was moldy. And in the other one, it looked just like freshly cooked rice. They were the same. They had been sitting there for the same amount of time. The only difference is in the way that the rice was being treated and talked to. So if you think about humans and what we're cultivating, that how much more that would even affect us. So this might be sounding kind of far-fetched, but that's okay. I really feel like I need to speak about this more and more. And I'd love to get into greater detail about how different ways that you can make this work for you. And again, I've noticed this over and over. I noticed it in my own experience. And when I talk to people, the environment that people are in matters. It really matters. It makes a difference in their symptoms. And again, we get so lost in the meaning of things and how do we fix it? We just need this constant, and humans want to make meaning of their experience, especially if you're highly analytical. But the beauty of this work is it transcends everything in your current reality. So it doesn't matter how bad things might look now. If you keep your focus on the end result, it will happen. So I just wanted to say that. And if you have any questions about this or comments, let me know. I did share recently a video of my daughter being sick, and she seemed to be making headway, and then she got really, really unwell again, high fever, barking cough, she was throwing up, and I couldn't get help. The doctors were kind of brushing it off, and so I spent the night just holding her hand and just speaking healing into her body. And the next day she woke up and she was better, and she never got worse again. She just recovered. It was amazing. And these are not coincidences. So I just want to encourage you, notice the small things. Notice what makes your symptoms worse. Notice what makes your symptoms better. And I bet that it has a lot to do with your environment. And you did not create this. Like this syndrome is very real, but your influence on it is more than you realize. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. Let me know your thoughts on this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.